Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, it's tax time again, so the Gifted Underachievers discuss taxes and creative work. The big takeaway? Whether you deal with the IRS or Canada Revenue Agency, you are not alone. Hey Pat.
Yes, James.
I'm down in the Gifted Underachievers Clubhouse tax preparation unit.
Great.
And I've had to step out for a minute because the 30 guys we've got using abacuses down there are making quite a racket.
Oh my God, yeah. Those abacuses.
Oh man, yeah, beads flying back and forth. It's like,
clack, 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 clack. You know?
Oh yeah, clack, 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 clack. It's driving me nuts. But it got me to thinking. Because obviously it's tax time. That's why I'm down in the abacus room. I don't know what those guys do when we're not doing our abacus stuff.
Yeah, me neither.
But it's tax time yet again. And as creatives, it's a little bit more complicated than it is for a lot of people. So what are you thinking? What's going on? Because you're going away in March. You've got to have I don't know, when's the deadline in Canada, first off? And
Depends.
two, you're going away for March, so you got to have your shit together. I'm sorry, when's the deadline?
Well, the end of the government's fiscal year is March 31st, so I believe many people have to have their taxes filed by April 1st. However, when you're self-employed, there's a bit of leeway. So if you remit tax back to the government, like if you charge clients tax and then remit it to the government, you've got to have that done by May 5th or something. I'm not sure if it's the same day every year. But if you're self-employed, you can, I believe, file taxes also up to the end of April. I don't know. In other words, I'm spitballing.
So if you wait past April 1st and things go tits up for you, don't blame Pat.
Yeah, you know what I do is I look it up every year, and every year I go, oh shit, I better get on that. And every year I get it to the accountant basically just in time. Sometimes they send me an email saying, if you don't want to get penalized, like if you don't want to get penalties, because if you file taxes and you owe money, then of course they charge interest. And they're like, we need it now if you want it done by the deadline. So that's only happened twice in the last 10 years, or 15 years, but happens. So what am I doing? I have my Excel spreadsheet open for my transactions of 2025, business related. I have a file full of hard copy receipts that I haven't looked at. I have all these online subscriptions I haven't looked at. I do basically, I think what I do is called sort of half-assed bookkeeping. Like I do it once in a while and then I don't do it for a while. So now I got to tidy up the entire year, make sure all my spending is noted and precise, and that I have separated out the amount of tax I spent on stuff for work. And I already know my income for last year because I added it up at the end of the year to see how far off I was from my goal. And so that part I've just got to go through and see which country the people came from and what exchange rate they used, so that I can then convert it. I've already converted it actually into Canadian funds because I transfer it to a Canadian bank out of a broker. So anyway, it's all very easy. It's just time consuming.
Yeah, and this speaks to what makes it complicated for creatives is, you know, um, we've got paperwork coming from multiple sources. And so not only is it, you've got to figure out, all of your business related spending for deductions and all that kind of stuff. But then after the tax year, I've got 1099s, which in the US is how somebody who pays me reports what they've paid me to the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got all these 1099s coming in. And then you've got, random other, probably the stuff that everybody else has for the most part. But, like I give money to National Public Radio. And so those things then, and, all that kind of stuff. And so it's a lot of organizing and collating and sort of figuring out.
Yeah. And chasing people down, because if somebody doesn't send you their form,
yeah,
and you run your own business and you do your own invoicing and stuff, like I don't have that same issue because we have a different system up here, but
Mhm.
um so I just have my invoice to them. That's and it was paid, so that's how I
Yeah.
show I've received money from them. But there's other I'm sure there's other situations. I do get W8 Ben from Amazon for books I sell that over Amazon
Mhm.
that I wrote, and a couple of other really minor. I think I get some from Draft to Digital and some from Ingram Spark. Um,
Mhm.
the money's, fairly negligible, but it is income, so I have to count it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's a way you can go download those forms from their sites, but you kind of
Mhm.
have to go do it.
Yeah. Now, how do you when you're figuring out and this may not apply to you because you have money that comes into the business and then you pay yourself out of the business.
That's correct.
And so do you pay the tax when it comes into the business or when it comes to you?
When it comes to me.
Okay. And so when you're figuring out so in the US we have to make estimated tax payments and
Right.
the way you're supposed to do it, the way it's structured is you pay them quarterly, right?
Yeah.
But the way unfortunately the money comes in is it never works really to be strictly quarterly because you get like a big lump sum and you pay a bunch of tax on that and then you get
Mm,
little bits all that kind of stuff. And then you're never sure, I'm never sure exactly what my deductions are going to be.
mm,
So, they tend to be around the same amount, but I can have years where, oops, it's a lot less,
yeah.
or wow, it's a lot way more than I thought it was going to be. And so I try to, when I make my estimated tax payments, I'll think about it in terms of uh, you know, overpaying a little bit as opposed to underpaying a little bit. So I
Yeah.
tend to think it more like 20%.
Yeah.
And it probably I could maybe get away with like 15%. For whatever reason, things seem to kind of work out at the end of the year, but you are a more structured person. So how do you figure that stuff out?
I just go by what I made. So just to circle back, like I pay income tax of everything I on everything I earn. Every penny I
Yeah.
earn, I pay income tax on it. It comes into the business, but some of it stays in the business to run the business. And then I give myself a draw, which is not
Mhm.
every cent I make. It's probably about 60% of what I make. 40% I leave in the
Mhm.
business, 60% I give myself as a draw. It's a pretty lean draw because I don't have a lot
Mhm.
of I don't spend that much. So anyway, the when tax time comes, and it varies. Like if I don't make much money, I use whatever's left in the business to as a draw, to make up my draw for the next month because I didn't have enough income to pay my own draw. And that's fine. I don't, it's like it all works out. In the government's eyes, I'm a sole proprietor, which means I'm not incorporated separately as
Okay.
a business. I'm a sole
Okay.
proprietor who
I
uses
think that was what was kind of confusing me a
Yeah,
little.
I just use a separate bank for my work related income and expenses, and then I transfer it to my personal bank, whatever my draw
Mhm.
is. So that way, when it comes time to figure out how much I spent in the business, I'm not combing through like, oh, groceries, oh, wait, fax machine stuff, or,
Right. Right.
it's all just in one. I use separate credit card, separate bank account, but I am a sole proprietor, so I'm not incorporated. I don't have those kinds of issues. Basically, I'm just a regular
Mhm.
person who makes all her money by herself. And then when it comes to tax time, the year I had a shitty year, I didn't spend much, like income wise, I didn't spend much on taxes. So I waited till I got the bill. I generally know how much, I know what tax bracket I'm in. So when I have a year that's yay big, I know I have to put yay percentage of that into, I just call it the buffer account. Um,
Mhm.
and that's where I pay my taxes out of. Um, so at tax time, I pay my income tax based on what the accountant says I owe and what I
Mhm.
figure I owe. I always have an idea and what it matches, and then I get a notice of assessment from the government of Canada based on, the tax return the accountant filed, and I pay that much. And
Mhm.
so if it's 15 grand, I pay 15 grand
Oh, so you pay it, you
once a
don't
year.
make estimated.
I don't
Okay.
do quarterly. You could, like I have an actor friend, she pays quarterly because one year she made an unreal, like way more money than normal because she was on Stargate, she was on X-Files, blah blah. So these were shows that were filmed in Vancouver. So she just made ridiculously more money than she had, like 5 times more than she had the previous year. And then she forgot that she'd have to pay tax on it, so she spent it. And then the next year she's like, oh shit, I probably shouldn't have spent all
Yeah.
that. So she phoned the government and said, I accidentally spent all this. What should I do? And they said, we'll make it quarterly. You pay this, this, this. I don't know if she
Uh-huh.
borrowed the money for that particular year, but every year
Uh-huh.
since then, she's paid quarterly until she got a jobby job.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Y- Yeah. I mean, I pay quarterly because I want to get it out of my account.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
I mean, that makes sense. I could pay
And
quarterly. I could phone them up and say, hey, I want to
yeah,
do this in quarterly payments now, and they'd do it. And then we just,
yeah.
I believe they balance it out at the end of the year, and you either owe.
Well, well, the problem in the US is that I've had to pay fines or fees. I don't know if they consider it a fine or a fee because if you don't make the right quarterly payments, then you get charged by the IRS for not following the right process.
And do they tell
So
you how much they want quarterly, or do you have to figure
yeah,
it out?
so when I'm doing, figuring out my taxes, I use one of the online, tax
Yeah,
preparing things because it's a little bit more complicated than most people, but it's not that complicated kind of thing.
yeah.
But also they're very knowledgeable on what, latest changes and all that kind of stuff. But at any rate, they as part of that service, they figure out, oh, okay, well, you paid this at this date and this at that date. It doesn't conform with their quarterly payment structure, so you owe
Mm,
100 kind of thing.
yeah,
So it's annoying, but
for sure.
you got to do it.
I
So.
think maybe the difference here is that my understanding is that for people who pay quarterly, the government of Canada tells them how much to pay.
Mhm,
And then if they make more than that, they owe more. They owe a little extra the next March or whenever they file their taxes.
mhm,
And if they have made less than that, they've got a bit of a credit to their account and they don't have to pay anything. And I don't believe they get any money back. The government keeps it till the next tax is due,
mhm.
and then they take it off that next payment,
Yeah. Well,
whatever.
we can do that. If you've overpaid, you can roll it over to the
Yeah,
following as
yeah.
part of that,
I think
which,
it's similar. I just that here it's
yeah.
we don't rely. I don't now. I was talking through my hat, but I don't think the person filing has to just know what the government want. The government says this is what you're going to pay every quarter for the
Yeah.
next year,
Yeah.
and it's based on the previous year's income usually. So,
Yeah, I mean you'll get that. I don't know. I would imagine an accountant would do this as well. But when I finish the taxes and everything's all said and done and print out the return, there's usually a couple of pages which say, based on this year, here are the
yeah.
quarterly payments that you'll need to make for next year.
Oh, that's good. See, it's
The
similar there then.
trouble is, and they give you like a printed little IRS form so that you can mail that in.
Yeah,
I do it online, so it's a little bit different story there. But um, but with the variability of our income,
yeah.
because some years it can be, you know, pretty good, and then
Hmm.
some years can be like, how did I survive?
Yeah,
uh, that trying to just be predictive about it
yeah,
based on what I did last year is probably a pretty good way to get into some trouble.
yeah, yeah. Fair
And
enough.
and then the other thing, there's definitely been years where I've owed. And one of the nice things, as long as it's not over a certain amount, the IRS has been very good about saying, set up a payment plan. What can you afford?
Yeah,
I can do this per month and,
yeah,
figure it out that way. There's definitely more rules and regulations around it, but,
yeah.
the I think they're more interested in making sure they get their money as opposed to trying to be overly punitive, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so there was that 2024 was a bad year. 2025, I didn't have enough money to pay my taxes because I'd made more in 2023. And and I was no wait, so sorry. 2024, I didn't have the large sum of money I needed to pay my taxes on the income I made in 2023.
Mhm.
So I mean, for me, it was large. Probably for a corporation, they'd be like, "Are you
Yeah.
joking?" Um,
Yeah.
but so I didn't have it in my business bank account. My draw I had spent surviving, like my whatever grand a month I'd pay myself, it was gone too. I had like used up a lot of money, um, just not working, not getting as much paid work and spending a lot of time on my mom's situation. So what I did have in my personal bank account was access to a line of credit. It wasn't a home equity line of credit. It wasn't guaranteed by owning anything. It was just sort of a decent interest rate line of credit. And I borrowed off my own line of credit personally
Mm.
to pay my taxes. And then when my business started doing better, I paid back my line of credit. So
You're
I
able to
and,
get.
and I also paid back the interest that I had personally spent on my line of credit, which was, a few $100.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting, I think most of us, all of us, it's really about one, wanting to do what you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
right? And doing what you're supposed to do because you want to avoid the worst case scenario,
Yeah, of course. Nobody wants to
which
get hassled
is,
by, nobody wants that. It's so
yeah.
onerous.
Yeah, getting hassled, being in it, my heart rate goes up when I see a letter in the box saying IRS on it.
Yeah,
It's like,
I can
and
imagine.
I had one year where the IRS sent me a letter saying that I had underreported my income by $25,000. And because of that, I owed them $16,000.
Holy shit.
And so I was, went through this panic, and then I realized that somehow there had been a mistake made where somebody who I had done work for, the IRS thought that that's where the money had come from, but
Mm,
it never existed. It never happened. So I was
yeah,
able to get all the documents, because I keep all the paperwork and all that kind of stuff, and send in
yeah,
an appeal saying here's what actually happened, and it worked out in the end. But
yeah.
yeah, don't want to go through that again for
No,
sure.
who would?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the IRS has a bit of a rep all over the world, but the Revenue Canada is not really any gentler. If you
Mm,
want to, if you want to be, if you want to stay out of their sites, you need to be compliant. You need to document everything. You need to
mm,
know what you're supposed to be doing and what you're not supposed to be doing. And if you don't know any of that stuff, you need to make it your business to find out
mm,
before you get into the weeds with them. Because, I was really surprised at how much attention, time, and money they will spend chasing very low income earners in the scheme of
mm.
things. They will go after somebody who makes 30 grand a year. They have no problem with that.
Yeah. Well, I think the IRS is similar in that, one of the things that we've seen and experienced in the US is people who are very, very wealthy, including our president,
Yeah.
have the resources to stymie the IRS
Yeah.
by hiring lawyers and all kinds of accounting tricks and accountants and all kinds of stuff like that. But if you're me or my neighbors,
Hmm.
and everybody I know, you don't have that. And so there's a path of least resistance, perhaps.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which
you
is
know,
doing it properly.
yeah, yeah. On our side, doing it properly and being aware that the IRS may also take a path of least resistance, where it's easier
Oh, I see what you're
to go
saying. Yeah.
after,
Right.
to go after somebody like us.
Exactly the same
I
thing here.
hope not,
Yeah.
but
Well, I mean, I said to the because I was asked to come down and have an interview, and I brought, of course, ridiculous amount of paperwork, and was pretty interested in answering their questions effectively, and they had really nothing to complain about. It was sort of a random thing where they check with. This is my impression because she didn't, they don't never explain why they're talking to you, but it was sort of a random thing where they were asking like, well, what about your mileage? Like that's, that you're supposed to track all that. And I'm like, I don't claim mileage. So it
mhm,
was very much just pick your name out of a hat. And I even said to the person, the officer from Revenue Canada I was speaking to, because we were in the room for 2.5 hours, and I said, how is it worth your time to talk to me? I make so little compared to most, to many people, basically. And I don't think I make a little amount of money period. I run my life, but what I meant was like there surely to God there are bigger fish you could catch who
Yeah.
are actually
Yeah.
doing something wrong. And she didn't obviously want to answer that. I think it was like you say, for them it's the path they you don't know why they do what they do. Your
Yeah.
best defense is to be very heavily compliant.
Yes. 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 Yeah. And, compliant and like you said, make sure that you can document stuff.
Everything. Document
you know,
everything.
and probably my paperwork keeping is not to the standard that an accountant would prefer, but I can prove
Yeah.
everything and I
If
can
they need an
document.
invoice, I can produce an invoice and it's a legitimate invoice and they can check with the vendor.
Mhm.
Same here, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and for expenses, that's the one that I always worry about is that, and I'll underclaim
Same here.
deductions so that I leave a
Yeah.
little wiggle room in case, they say, what about this? What about that? And I say, well, I didn't do this. So it, evens out in the end. Um, but yeah, being very cautious about that.
Yeah.
So when they come to you and they say, did you really spend X amount on a new computer? Here it is.
Here's the
Yes.
bill. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just wise. You don't want to waste your time and energy. I think one thing we could talk about another time when we're doing tax review stuff is, what are some efficiencies we could apply to our system? I'm
Yeah.
quite haphazard, right? But I'm more organized maybe than you, but I'm not super organized.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm at risk, and they have that little panic attack when you hit send or put the envelope in the mail or
Yeah.
however it is. That you never feel completely assured. But yeah, any way to get a little bit more peace of mind.
Yeah, and I honestly think you don't have to be in an LLC or you don't have to be incorporated or anything like that in order to go to a separate bank than the one you do your family banking at and open
Mhm.
a checking account and a savings account. You don't need anything special. It can still be personal accounts. It would be,
Mhm.
and then just use a separate, have them with a credit card and only do your business stuff with those
Yeah,
accounts. Then you are not wondering about anything because you can pull
yeah.
reports from those accounts and say, okay, well, here's how much I spent. It was all work related because I only ever do work related stuff with this account.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it gets it in the I'm not sure if it's the same you have the same setup in Canada, but it gets a little bit more complicated in the US because home offices qualify for deduction and what you spend a
No, yeah, that's
percentage,
same here.
that
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah.
And so
I'm not talking
yeah,
about expenses. I'm talking about how you track the money. I'm not talking about
oh, okay.
how you
Okay.
spend the
I
money.
see. I
Yeah.
see. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you're doing is really smart. Again, because you're not creating some legal situation where that they can come at you and say, well, you need to pay taxes on the business, you need da, da, da. But you're also able to really control your spending and understand your income. I
Yeah,
think,
that's
much better than
important.
what I do, for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know why more people don't do it. I teach how to like I teach a lot of stuff, and one of them is in this developmental editing course I teach. It's like, the business end. I spend like 2 hours on the business end, and the amount of faces I've seen go, huh? When I say to
Mhm.
have your business stuff at a different bank. Like it doesn't have to be at the same bank. And then you just eliminate so many obstacles like pouring through receipts. What is that for? Um, so I'm surprised more people don't do it that way, but whatever, everybody does their own
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
you know.
And if anybody from Revenue Canada or the IRS is listening, this is John Doe and Jane Doe, your
Yes,
guest hosts for Gifted Underachievers.
fully compliant with every
Complete
aspect.
compliance, doing everything we can to be on your good graces.
Yeah, because guess what? We don't have any money.
Yeah, can't bleed a stone. Ba-da-ba. Thanks for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. We'd love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email at giftedunderachievers@substack.com. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else you'd like to download your podcasts. Also, please hit the share and or subscribe button. It really does help. And as always, please have an awesome day.